So in this video, we're going to talk about the key contribution of this article, and that's the plus zone challenge. This is how you can teach people to be entrepreneurs, doctors, or really any other subject, right? And this is how they define the plus zone challenges on page 111. And I'll show you right where I'm reading from. If you're looking at the article, so there's the whole page, and I'm reading right here. The plus zone challenge is the challenge to transcend vocational mundanity and specifics in an entrepreneurship curriculum and attempt to do something unique and valuable for the whole person, the entirety of every student. In other words, the goal of the university is to, yes, we've got to teach you how to write a business plan on an entrepreneurship class, but we have to do more than teach you how to write a business plan. We have to teach you how, and we have to teach you more than just the theory too, right? We have to teach you to understand what a business plan is, what it means, how to apply it to your own situation for your own ways and for your own reasons, right? That's when you've understood the plus zone challenge. And let's be honest, I've graduated from undergrad, gosh, 15 years ago. That's a long time ago. Do I remember, what one of my professors said on lecture 13, halfway through? Of course I don't remember any of that. But do I remember what some of the basic principles were? Do I remember the way that I was taught to think and apply those things? And can I think about, well, I've got this problem, it might require a business plan. I don't remember how to do a business plan, but now I can look it up and I can create my own business plan, specifically one that suits me, not just one that followed all of Dr. D's steps. If the answer is yes, then you've met the plus zone challenge. Okay? And I just want to take a couple quotes from Whitehead in here, right? So Whitehead says something interesting. The plus zone challenge, this is before we get into the Whitehead quote, sorry, I just kicked my camera. But the whole point of the plus zone challenge is to combine the vocational and the theory and impact, or teaching about it, aspects in such a way that stimulates the imagination, right? It encourages the student's thought experiment. And he says, the function of a university is to enable you to shed details in favor of principles. And that's one of those things where the university differs from the quote-unquote real world, right? We're teaching you, we're training you how to think, because when you get into the workplace and when you do your internships, you're going to be absorbed in the mundanity. You're going to be absorbed in everyday processes. But if you have a good foundation, good wisdom, good ways of thinking, it will give meaning to those routines. And when you have meaning in those routines, you can find out ways to optimize those routines. And let me give an example from my own personal experience. And I've had this happen dozens of times. An alternate tool to the business plan is called the business model canvas. Some people also call that a business plan, although it looks very different from the stereotypical North American business plan. So I learned how to do everything in a business model canvas step by step. Congratulations. I memorized 75 pages of a book. That's basically what that means. That's just the vocational stuff, right? And that particular book doesn't have a lot of theory. But anyhow, I took that theory that I learned from my other entrepreneurship courses, and then I looked at the vocational side of how to do a business model canvas, and I can't tell you the number of times I have been asked in a professional setting, oh, I need a business plan for that. Well, I know for a fact that the person that wants that business plan, or says they want a business plan, doesn't really want a business plan. They just saw on TV that business plans are useful and it gives you a degree of legitimacy, and I know that writing a business plan is completely not going to satisfy them. But what I do instead is I twist and I pervert a business model canvas to suit what I'm trying to do, and that gives me the legitimacy. That's an example of the plus zone. So I had the basic knowledge of how to write a business model canvas. I have the theory that kind of goes with it. I combine those two to twist and pervert a business model canvas to suit the needs of a situation. Now that is important, right? Because I can look up the vocational aspects of it. Whitehead also says, and this is an example of what Whitehead says, the function of a university is to enable you to shed details in favor of principles. I understood that a tool was out there and I could twist it to suit what I was trying to do, right? And he says something else about universities, right? I don't read a lot, but I think this is important. Whitehead says the justification for a university is that it preserves a connection between knowledge and the zest for life by uniting the young and old in the imaginative consideration of learning. I'd like to think I'm not that old. The university imparts information, but it imparts it imaginatively. In other words, I have to teach you, students, in such a way that you can think about, how could I apply this in my own life? At least this is the function it should perform for society. A university which fails in this respect has no reason for existence. The atmosphere of excitement arising from an imaginative consideration transforms knowledge. You, the learner, and I'm speaking now, not Whitehead, you, the learner, are the one that transforms what I'm teaching you. A fact is no longer a bare fact. It is invested with all of its possibilities. It is no longer a burden on the memory. It is as energizing as the poet of our dreams and as of the architect of our purposes. Okay? So when I'm teaching you something, your job as a student is to think. Of course, my job is to teach it in such a way that imparts the imagination, but your job as a student is to say, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to real life? And if you can't figure that out, what should you do? You should raise your hand and ask, hey, professor, how is this applicable to anything? Now, I'll be happy to have that discussion with you because it's my job to make sure that you're successful. And I'll go down every little rabbit hole I need to go to make sure you understand. I do have faculty members that get very offended and get very testy when they're asked this question. That is someone who does not know what they're talking about. Okay? You should always feel free to ask, how does this apply to me? Or how is this relevant to anything? Now, I reflect upon a time when I was teaching a student. We were doing some modules on corporate entrepreneurship. And he said, I don't feel that this is relevant to me, because he was already a successful entrepreneur, but he had a very small, it was almost a sole proprietorship, because it was just him and he had like one guy that helped him like 2 days a week or something like that. And he said, I will never be that kind of a corporate entrepreneur. And I said, you might not now, but what if your shop grows from one location to 15 and you've got dozens of employees working for you and you want to encourage some of your new employees to have new ideas and innovation, and you want to harness that. That's when you'll need this corporate entrepreneurship. And I agreed with him. At that very moment, with just him and one employee 2 days a week, he didn't really need any sort of corporate entrepreneurship. But I at least tried to explain to him at a time when that would be useful to him. Or that if he decided not to be an entrepreneur, using those entrepreneurial tool sets that he acquires for the benefit of his much larger employer. So you always need to be able to explain it, and he understood at that point. But you see, and I welcome the fact that he challenged me, right? That's him getting his money's worth out of his tuition. And to me, it helps me give better explanations and helps me become a better teacher along the way. So I appreciate those kinds of things. And any good educator should do the same. Because the Plus Zone Challenge is a reciprocal relationship between student and teacher. It's an apprenticeship. You're learning from me, but as I'm teaching you, I'm also learning to be a better teacher. Okay. So Whitehead has a couple more concepts here that I think are important. He says this: the way in which a university should function in preparation for an intellectual career, such as modern business or one of the older professions, is by promoting the imaginative consideration of the various general principles underlying the career. Its students thus pass into their period of technical apprenticeship with their imaginations already practiced in connecting details with general principles. The routine then receives its meaning and also illuminates the principles which give it that meaning. Hence, instead of a drudgery issuing in a blind rule of thumb, the properly trained man, or woman, has some hope of obtaining an imagination disciplined by detailed facts and by necessary habits. In other words, the stuff that you learn in an entrepreneurship degree or in any sort of education helps you understand why you do what you do in a job. And when you understand why you do something, especially, Whitehead was writing in the late 20s, but you think about how technology is revolutionizing the workplace, right? If you can understand how new technology can help you do whatever it is you're trying to do, the reason why you're doing whatever it is, you can use that new technology, for example, and be more efficient. There's so many reasons that you need to understand why you're doing what you do, right? That way you can contribute to that task for your own ways and your own reasons. And a big part of what you as students need to do, and I like how Kevin Hendel says this, the challenge revolves around philosophy, subject critique, and self-critique. Okay? So in other words, when you are taught something in class, you need to understand the philosophy behind it. Why, what is this? What are we actually talking about? What is this theory? What is a business plan, the vocational piece? Then you have to get into subject critique. So great, Dr. D has taught you how to do a business plan. And then you start engaging in subject critique. Well, but business plans aren't useful in these certain circumstances. And the way this business plan has been presented to me, I see holes in it. I see this is wrong in somewhere. I see something missing, right? And then you engage in self-critique. In other words, now, how can I use that business plan for me? How can I take that 15-step business plan and turn it into a 20-step business plan, because what I'm doing is way more complex than what Dr. D taught me? Or, you know what? How do I get rid of 5 or 6 of the steps to make it simpler, because that's what the customer wants? Okay? That's that self-critique. How does this apply to me and my situations? You have to be greedy as a student. You have to figure out, how do I make this make sense for me? How do I apply this for me? Because remember, it's all about you as a student, right? We're here for you. And, that's, when I say, it's all about you, I think that's where a university is not the real world. And Bloom makes this comment. He says something interesting. Kevin Hendel disagrees with this statement, but I agree with it. He says, to sum up, there's one simple rule for the university's activity. It need not concern itself with providing its students with experiences that are available in a democratic society. They will have them in any event. It must provide them with experiences they cannot have there. Okay? So in other words, the university is not the real world. It's not where real happens, right? That's not what a university is for, right? If that's what you want, then go be an apprentice, go be a tradesperson, go take a regular job. What a university does instead, it gives you the time to explore things imaginatively and in an unrestricted fashion. It's your time to fail. And you think about that with entrepreneurship. You know what, you've got this wild and crazy and bold idea for a business plan, but you don't know if it's going to work. Well, guess what? The whole purpose of a university is for you to try it. Okay? If your business plan totally flops, or let's say your idea totally flops, but you did a really good job with the business plan, and I could tell that you used your imagination, you got it, you know something? I, as a faculty member, I'm going to be right there to catch you when you fall. In fact, I'll probably be totally wowed that you had some wild and crazy idea. You'll get the A, even though the idea itself might not work in reality, but I'll at least be there trying to help, mentor, and guide you. I'm very different than a boss, because with a boss, if you try something wild and crazy and imaginative, and it screws up, I'm not going to sit there and laugh and give you a high five for trying to be creative. You're going to be fired, right? You don't have as much time in the quote-unquote real world to explore things imaginatively. You don't have time to make young and foolish mistakes, right? The university, whether it's undergrad, MBA, or doctorate, is the time to do that. Okay, that's important. Take risks. Be bold. Work with your faculty. Ask questions. Ask the dumb questions. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? People will laugh and giggle, but you're not going to get fired. You're not going to get demoted. None of that. This is your space to fail or to succeed, whatever you want to do with it. This is your space to take the 400-page book that you get assigned in class and cannibalize it for 100 pages that you can actually use for whatever it is you're trying to do. Please remember that. If you remember nothing else from Dr. D, remember that. And think of this. I like how Kevin Hendel says this. This is on page 112. The whole purpose of a university is for the students to get their personal acquisition of general principles that will ultimately give the university student his or her unique voice in the conversation of humanity. Some of my other research, we talk about a university as an identity workspace. It's your place to learn vocational things, to gather wisdom, and to help form your identity. It's all about you, your personal and professional development. You just don't get that in the work world, right? Okay, so I got just a little pepped up there. So yes, to build on this, why the university is unique. It's not the real world, okay? And I like how Kevin says this on page 113. The university's task is to provide that imaginative contemplation of specific knowledge that can be had nowhere else. Nowhere else. Nonetheless, the university does have to concern itself with this dreaded real world, right? You can't be totally separated from it. The stuff that you learn has to be applicable to the real world, but it's your time to be separated from the real world in order to better understand it. I think that's what Handel doesn't nearly say as clearly as he probably should. So the careful shielding of a university from the activities of the real world, totally shielded that is a good way to chill interest and defeat progress. Celibacy does not suit a university. It must mate itself with action. So just like teaching a business plan, I don't teach you a business plan just to stimulate your imagination. I teach you a business plan because that's a skill that you're going to need when you actually get out into the quote-unquote real world. Nonetheless, your grappling with and your ability to imaginatively struggle with the business plan and the way that you do it, that's where the university has its value. The value for you, the student. All right, so I got way excited by this lecture. Let me ask you guys some questions. Post your answers in the comments. What do you think about the Plus Zone Challenge? Do you feel that your current education is Plus Zone Challenge friendly? Here's one. Do you think that a university should be all about where real happens, or being in the real world? I.e., should it be nothing more than just a glorified apprenticeship? Or should it be to impart imagination, to teach you to be successful when you get out into the real world? I'd be curious for your feedback. Make sure you post those comments down below for me. And as always, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, that's a like, subscribe, and again, post comments. If you like this video, you're going to love the next one. We're going to talk about who should teach entrepreneurship. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.